What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another post-game show here on Mets Central. This is post-game show number 34. The Mets unfortunately dropped the second game of the series to the St. Louis Cardinals by a score of 6-5, and a very frustrating game where the Mets, they fought, they battled, but ultimately it wasn't enough, and they just came off short. And listen. We have a lot to get into this game. Obviously, we had Blake Tidwell today for the Mets, who was making his major league debut, his first start ever. We're gonna get into that. I mean, today's game, like I said, it was definitely frustrating because the offense battled. They made it close. They almost came back. They had rallies in the eighth. They had a small little rally in the ninth, but ultimately, kind of just the same things where we've talked about it in the previous games, and we just kind of saw it in the Diamondbacks here that just passed, where the same little problems with the Mets, where they just every time they get the bases loaded or every time they get multiple guys in scoring position, they just like they'll get it close, but they just can't get that big hit to either tie the game or to take the lead of the game. But yeah, obviously we'll talk about it more as we get into the actual post game breakdown. So before we do that, make sure you guys, of course, leave a like and subscribe on the channel. We always greatly appreciate your guys' support for the channel, and we want to keep feeding you guys content. So the more you guys do that, the more we're gonna keep feeding you guys content here throughout the rest of the season. But anyway, let's get into the post game recap. So on the mound for the Mets today, of course, it was Blake Tidwell making his major league debut, and then for the Cardinals, you had Eric Fetty pitching. So, and of course, today we had a doubleheader because this game was supposed to be played yesterday, but of course there was a rain out. So, split schedule doubleheader today. Obviously, the next game is going to start around 6:15. Tyler McGill's going to be pitching for the Mets in that game. But going into this game, so you had Francisco Lindor leading up the game. He would strike out. Juan Soto would then almost hit a home run. He hit it deep to the track in right field, but it was just caught by I believe it was Lars Nootbaar, right? So he took it away. So he would fly out. Pete Alonso would then double. Brandon Nimmo, who's looking like he's getting a little bit back into shape, he hits a double to bring Pete home, and the Mets would take an early 1-0 lead. Jesse Winker would then walk, and then Luis Torrens would line out to end the inning. Bottom of the first, Lars Nootbaar leading up for the Cardinals. He would ground out. Alec Burleson would then hit a single. There would then be a pass ball by Luis Torrens, so Burleson would move up to second base. Brendan Donovan would then pop out, and then Nolan Arenado would ground out the end of the inning. So a little nice inning for Blake Tidwell there. Then going on to the top of the second, you have Jeff McNeil, who grounds out. Luis Acuna, who had a big game at the plate today, he would single. Jose Azocar would pop out. There would be injury delay, and then Francisco Lindor would ground out the end of the inning. Bottom of the second, Blake Tidwell would throw a bit of a hanging slider to Wilson Contreras. He would take it. He would take it to opposite field, and he would hit a home run to tie up the game at 1. Nolan Gorman would then walk. Pedro Paz would strike out. Victor Scott would then single, but Tidwell would get out of the inning, only giving up the 1 run, as he would get Barraro to fly out to second, or he would get Barraro to fly out to Jeff McNeil at second, and then Lars Nootbaar would strike out the end of the inning. Top of the third, Juan Soto would single. Pete Alonso would then double. Brandon Nimmo would then ground out. Jesse Winker would hit a sac fly to put the Mets up 2-1. There would be a pass ball. Pete Alonso would move up to third base. Luis Torrens would walk, and then Jeff McNeil would pop out to Nolan Arenado to end the inning. Then we get into the bottom of the third. Alec Burleson pops out. Brendan Donovan singles. Nolan Arenado singles. Wilson Contreras singles. Then Nolan Gorman hits a sacrifice fly double play to tie the game up at 2. And yes, it was a fly out to left field. Then the Mets got the Cardinals into a little bit of a rundown, and they were able to tag out Nolan Arenado to get the final out of the inning. So after that, like I said, you get out of the inning tied 2-2. We then move on to the top of the fourth. Luis Angel Acuna walks. Jose Azocar would then strike out. He would be called out on strikes. Acuna would then steal second. Lindor would then strike out swinging, and then Juan Soto called out on strikes to end the inning. Bottom of the fourth, a defensive substitution as Mark Fientos would come in to replace Jesse Winker. He would move over to third base. Acuna would move over to second base, and McNeil would move into left field to replace Winker. And we ended up getting news on that. So apparently, this was during the game. The Mets said that Winker was dealing with right side soreness. But then Mike Puma, obviously, as the game just finished, he came out and said that Winker is getting an MRI for a possible oblique strain for Jesse Winker. So yeah, if Jesse Winker is going to miss some time, that's obviously not too good because obviously right now Marte's pretty much our only DH option, and we know that Marte isn't the greatest DH option. And even though for Winker, even though the numbers exactly haven't been there and they've been pretty, Winker the last couple of games he's had a lot better at bats. He's hitting the ball harder. He's hitting the ball for more contact. So it would definitely suck to lose Jesse Winker for any period of time, especially now with all the injuries that the Mets are having for their bullpen. But listen, it is what it is. If he's hurt, he has to miss some time. Mets just got to deal with it. It's a next man up mentality. But yeah, so after that, Pedro Pajas would pop out. Victor Scott would single. Jose Barrero would be hit by a pitch. Lars Nootbaar would fly out. Alec Burleson would then walk. Brendan Donovan would then hit a single to bring in two as the Cardinals would take a 4-2 lead. Nolan Arenado would then walk. And then Wilson Contreras would single to bring in two more runs to extend the Cardinal lead to 6-2. Hennessy Cabrera comes in to replace Blade Tidwell, and he would get Nolan Gorman to flat the end of the inning. So, yeah. So for Blade Tidwell, I mean, I'm gonna pull it up here. His final line today, obviously goes 3 2/3 of an inning, gives up 9 hits, gives up 6 runs, 3 walks, 2 strikeouts, 1 home run. Obviously the Wilson Contreras one, and I know small sample size, but his ERA is 14.73 in the 1 star. So, overall, my assessment of Blade Tidwell's start. Not great, not terrible either, because I mean, listen, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. At the end of the day, it is his first major league start. So I'm sure there were jitters, there were nervouses, there were, butterflies in the stomach, as the classic quote would be. So, yeah, I think the biggest thing for Blade Tidwell, and he did get unlucky at some points because, he did give up a couple soft contact hits. I mean, I recall too, because I know he gave up the home run to a Wilson Contreras in the second inning, but there was 2 pitches that he made a Contreras where, he located the slider really nicely on the outside part of the plate, and Contreras just stuck his bat out there and, was able to poke hits out and into the outfield. And then, but there was also a couple times where, his pitch location wasn't great. He did hang the slider a couple times. Fastball, I'll say, was pretty good. I mean, if you look at his total, pitch breakdown, fastball, that was the pitch he threw the most on. I'm looking at this on Baseball Savant right now, but threw the 4-seamer 33 times. Had decent velocity on it. Topped out at just over 97 miles an hour on it. So, sorry, no, I was looking at Hennessy Cabrera's pitch. No, so he topped out at 98 and a half on his fastball. So I really like the velo from Blade Tidwell. I thought his slider, for the most part, was decent. Like I said, there was some parts where he did locate it and he just got unlucky. A couple times he did get swings and misses on it, and then there was the odd time here and there where he would hang it. But yeah, I mean, like I said, and then overall, when you look at the the swings and whiffs, obviously gets 11 swings, 2 whiffs on the fastball, slider 12 swings and 3 whiffs. So there was a little bit of swing and miss stuff on there, but not a whole lot there. But I think the other thing that did hurt Blade Tidwell was because usually, sorry, let me get my words together. I apologize, guys, but usually, when you see pitchers now modern days, they're going out there and they're pretty much throwing 3, 4, 5 pitches for the most part in their arsenal. I mean, and then when you look at Blade Tidwell today, most of his pitches today were the 4-seam and the slider. So I know he threw the sinker 14 times, but he really didn't throw it a ton for my liking. And I was about to say that's the kind of thing that hurt Blade Tidwell, because if you're going to go out there and you're just going to throw like 2 main pitches, especially it's major league caliber hitting, they're going to figure out at some point, and they're going to put the bat on the ball, they're going to make contact, they're going to find the holes, and they're going to do damage against you. And like I said, that's the thing that hurt Blade Tidwell, was he didn't have that third pitch that he was comfortable with just to go out there and throw. Like for example, the sinker. I mean, sorry, not the sinker. The changeup. Only threw it 6 times. So, like I said, the more starts he gets, and he's going to get sent down today because the Mets are going to have Dednell Nunez up for the second game. So he's going to get, like I said, he's going to get sent down. And I think the notification just did come in that Tidwell did get sent down, and Nunez just came up for the second game. So listen, he's obviously this is not going to only be his only major league start. He will get more major league starts at some point, but I would like to see him expand just his arsenal a little bit. Incorporate the third pitch, incorporate that four pitch, use a little bit more, use those pitches a little bit more, get a bit more confidence. But overall, like I said, for Tidwell, wasn't great, wasn't terrible either. It was just mediocre. But we continue on with the game, go to the top of the fifth. Pete Alonso would then fly out. Brandon Nimmo would ground out. Mark Vientos would walk, and then Luis Torrens would ground out the end of the inning. Bottom of the fifth, Pedro Pajas would line out. Victor Scott would ground out. Jose Barrero would single. And then Lars Nootbaar would pop out to shortstop in the inning. Move on to the top of the sixth. Jeff McNeil would draw a walk. Luis Angel Acuna would single. Kyle Leahy would come in to replace Eric Fetty. Jose Azocar would fly out. Francisco Lindor would ground into a force out and would bring in Jeff McNeil to score to make it a 6-3 ball game. And then Juan Soto called down strikes at the end of the inning. We then go to the bottom of the sixth. Alec Burleson would ground out. Brendan Donovan would fly out. Nolan Arenado would single. Then a pitching change for the Mets as Brazaban comes in to replace Hennessy Cabrera. So overall for Cabrera, much better relief appearance than compared to the one that he had against the Diamondbacks. Looked a lot more comfortable. The stuff was definitely a lot better. Got a bit more swing and miss stuff on the stuff. So I mean, listen, like we were talking about, Evan brought up in the last podcast, but with the injuries now to the bullpen, and especially now that the Mets really don't have any other lefties, because we got the news today that Danny Young would be needing Tommy John surgery, and obviously we don't know how long AJ Minter is going to be out for. So the Mets are going to need help in terms of left-handed relievers. So listen, if Hennessy Cabrera could come up here and obviously struggled his first outing, looked better today, but if he could find some, decent footing on here and could establish himself as just a reliable lefty, that I would definitely hope, because then pretty much your other option would then, be going through the trade market or, through free agency, even though I don't even know how many really solid lefties there are out in free agency. I mean, obviously there is David Robertson, who the Mets could bring back. And I know people will say that Robertson is a righty, but Robertson does have good reverse splits against lefties. So he's definitely an option, but hopefully for Cabrera's sake, he's able to come up here and, replicate this outing out of the bullpen for his next appearance. So we then move on. Obviously, like I said, Brazaban comes in, hits Wilson Contreras on the first pitch he throws. He then gets Nolan Gorman to strike out. We move on to the top of the seventh. Quick 1-2-3 inning. Alonso flies out. Nimmo walks, and Vientos hits into a ground inning double play. Bottom of the seventh, Austin Warren comes in to replace Brazaban. He'd get Pajas to ground out. Victor Scott would then walk. Jose Barrera strikes out, and Lars Nootbaar would fly out. So decent inning for Austin Warren there. Phil Maton then comes in for Kyle Leahy, and the Mets would start to rally here as Luis Torrens would walk. McNeil would ground into a force out. Acuna would then single. Tyrone Taylor would then come into pitch hit for Azocar. Taylor then hits a single, so loads up the bases, one out. Lindor comes in with a single, brings in two as McNeil and Acuna come around to score. Jojo Romero then comes in to replace Phil Maton. Juan Soto walks. Pete Alonso then called it on strikes, and this was a tough one because it looked like a ball, but then looking back at Pitch Tracker, the Romero did get a little bit of the bottom portion of the plate. So listen, it's one of those things where you could get on the arm for that, but it's one of those pitches where, as the old cliche in baseball goes, it's too close to call. So it is what it is. It could have gone either way. And then Brandon Nimmo would then fly out to end the inning. Bottom of the eighth, Tyrone Taylor remains in the game. He replaces, comes in for Azocar. Then another pitching change as Reed Garrett comes in to replace Austin Warren. He would get Burleson to fly out. Brendan Donovan would walk. Nolan Arenado, Brendan Donovan would walk. Then Nolan Arenado would hit into what it looked like it would be a double play, but Mets challenged the play at first would be reversed. So Arenado was on first, but then Wilson Contreras strikes out to end the inning. Then we go to the top of the ninth. Ryan Helsley, Cardinals closer, comes in to replace Jojo Romero. Vientos would hit a single. Marte would come into pinch run for Vientos. Luis Torrens would then strike out. Wild pitch then by Helsley. Marte would move over to second base. McNeil would then line out, and that was a tough at bat because it looked off the bat that it might have gotten over the head of Nootbaar in right field, but it was caught. Marte obviously tags up. He moves over to third, and then Luis Acuna going for a 4-for-4 day. He pops out to end the ball game, and the Mets lose 6-5. So, like I said, it was a tough, hard fought game by the Mets, but ultimately they just come up short. And like I said again, with the offense, like they're able to get these stretches, together where they're able to rally, they're able to get guys on base, and we saw in the eighth where they're able to score 3 runs. But then when it just comes up and they have to get that either that tying run or the run to take the lead, they just falter for some reason. And it's really frustrating because this is also something that we saw in the Diamondback series, especially in the last game where, obviously Soto hits the 2 home runs in the finale of the Diamondbacks series. And, they had that opportunity in the eighth inning and they just couldn't get runners across because, the Mets this year have notoriously been a poor team when it comes to situational hitting. But and then also another thing, because obviously Eric Fetty pitched today, and Eric Fetty didn't have his best stuff. The Mets were actually making good contact off him. The Cardinals pitching staff in total actually walked, I believe, 7 guys today, or might have been even 8 guys. So yeah, I mean, and then obviously the other thing with Fetty, and we've obviously talked about it before, and Evans brought it up before on here, during the podcast, but it just seems like, when the Mets hitters and the lineup, they get pitchers into trouble early on in the game, and they're able to get a couple runs off. They can't seem to stomp their foot on their neck and just take them out of the game. That also seems to be one of this team's weaknesses when it comes to offense. Now, hopefully this does turn around, and obviously we get to later in the season that they're able to do this, but you know obviously it's definitely frustrating because you want to see this team win ball games. You want to see them score runs a lot every game. It's just it is what it is at the moment right now. They just listen. They're winning games. Maybe the brand of baseball isn't the prettiest at the moment, but the hope is, and I still believe that they'll improve on things, and then you'll see them winning at a prettier rate. And listen, now today, obviously they lose the first game. You got the second game at 6:15. You have McGill on the mound for the Mets, and then AJ Palante on the mound for the Cardinals. The Mets, they gotta win this game because you cannot go into St. Louis, a team that is 15-19 right now, and lose this series, especially going into Arizona tomorrow to start a 3-game set. You gotta bulk down, you gotta win this series, you gotta recover. But yeah, anyway, guys, before we get out of here, or actually before I get out of here because Evan's not here. Before I get out of here, I'm gonna just go through some of you guys' comments and interact with you guys. Max Thunder, why aren't they bringing up Sproat for situations like this? Maybe it's just a situation where Sproat, they don't feel he's ready yet. Because I know I've seen a couple of his lines so far in AAA, and he's gotten beat up a couple times. He's had a couple good starts here and there, but there has been a couple times where he's only pitched about 3 or 4 innings, and he's given up a lot of runs and a lot of runs and hits. So maybe at the end of the day, Stearns just doesn't feel that Sproat's ready yet, and they just want to over marinate him. Which, listen, I don't have a problem with that. I trust this team's pitching, so it just seems like whoever they bring up, they're going to come in and they're going to pitch well. I know with Tidwell today, he wasn't great. It is what it is. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt, like I said, because it was his first major league his first major league start, obviously. So I'll give him the benefit of the doubt there. But yeah, like I said, probably with Stearns, they don't feel that they don't feel like Sproat is ready yet. 0 for 4 from McNeil. Yes, yeah. Listen, we all, you guys all know me and Evan's opinions on McNeil. We know we don't like him. We know we want to ship him out in the offseason, but it wasn't going to happen. Maybe they ship him out next offseason, but for now he's here, and he's going to play because he's being paid $50 million a year, right? So it is what it is. Bring back Brett Beatty, trade Jeff McNeil. I don't really think that's much of an improvement, to be honest. Both Beatty and McNeil are just not good in my opinion. Jonathan, last time we got a solo Maddie show, Evan went on a cruise. No, he didn't. No, he didn't he didn't go on a cruise, Jonathan. What was it? I did the last time I did the post game show was for the in the National Series when Budo blew that game. So and Evan wasn't just on he wasn't on a cruise or a vacation. He was just couldn't do the show that day, so I stepped in for him and I did it. 2 Cats, just so annoying that every loss is a copy and paste. Tease us and always lose a close game because they leave everyone and their mom on base. Gotta be more clutch in close games. And I mean, yeah, that's the big thing, and that's the thing that we've been talking about, especially in the post games. And listen, because I remember talking about this with Evan, like because obviously, like the Mets, a lot of their losses this year have been due to close games. Either 1 run, 2 runs, 3 runs, and listen, the fact of the matter is that the Mets are a good team and they're going to be in a lot of close games. So, and naturally, like I said, when you're a good team, you're going to lose a lot of close games. So, and listen, at the end of the day, it's baseball. It's a 162 game season. You're not going to win every game, but we would at least me, and I'm sure you guys in the chat, Evan, and every single Mets fan out there would definitely like to see that the Mets start, winning these games and capitalizing when they get runners on base and when they get runners in scoring position. Right now, it's not happening. And listen, like I said, every time you're not going to win. You're not going to, get runners across. Every time your bullpen's not going to be the sharpest, but it's just, I would like to see a bit more execution with when guys come on base and like for example, like when the Mets get, bases loaded or when they get second and third with no out, you want to see them drive in those runs. At the moment, they're just not doing it. A very good team and their own worst enemies themselves. They lose to themselves on mistakes, not because the other teams are better. Yeah. I mean, it's happened. We've seen it before. I mean, prime example. Look at the National Series. Those two losses. The first game they have the lead. They blow in the ninth inning. Obviously, McNeil can't keep the ground ball in the infield. Then Abrams came around to score. And then the last game of that series where Budo comes in, he blows that game, and then again they have the lead in the bottom of the ninth, and the bullpen again came in and blew it. So listen, it happens. Like I said, it's baseball. Sometimes you're gonna beat yourself. It happens, but it's all about just minimizing that. And listen, ultimately, I know people don't like to hear the it's early stuff, and I usually I don't like to throw that around either, but I do trust in this team. I do trust Stearns. I do think they'll get upgrades. I do think, I mean, obviously, we're seeing the top guys starting to play a little bit better. I think eventually we'll get to a point where this team is playing much prettier baseball at a consistent rate. And if that doesn't happen, then we'll criticize them. But I'll maintain my trust in them and the front office that, they'll turn it around and we'll start to see a better brand of baseball. But yeah, like I said, second game of the doubleheader, 6:15, McGill versus Palante on the mound. Mets gotta win the second game of the doubleheader and take the series before they head out to Arizona tomorrow to start a 3-game set against the Diamondbacks. Before we go, the lineup is stacked. I really don't know how many teams that are truly better, so I have full trust. Yeah. This thing, the lineup is good. Obviously, there is some holes. Obviously, Winker is going for an MRI right now, so obviously, if he gets hurt, that's a little bit of a loss because you're gonna have Marte there, and we don't love seeing Marte up in those situations, but it is what it is. He's just gonna have to play better and start coming through, even though we don't have much faith in them. But yeah, I mean, obviously, like also at the end of the day, there's a trade deadline, so we know Stearns is gonna go out there. We know he's gonna make trades. He might maybe make a signing or two here or there for the bullpen. So and listen, maybe the Mets bring up a couple guys here and there from the minors. Maybe Ryan Clifford gets a shot. Maybe Drew Gilbert gets a shot. Who knows? Who knows? But we'll see. And yeah, as 2K say, take the W tonight and take 2-3 in Arizona. So yeah, at the end of the day, you just got to keep winning series. So anyway, guys, that's it for me. I'm pretty sure Evan's going to do the post game for the second game tonight. If he's not, then obviously you'll see me back here doing it. But I'm pretty sure it's going to be Evan tonight. And then obviously after this game concludes, tomorrow we'll have our post game to wrap up the this Cardinal series, and then we'll preview the upcoming series in Arizona as always. So, and then yeah, peace out, Matt. Thanks for the stream, brother. Yep, no problem. And then Jonathan, Jet Williams or nowhere. Maybe Jet Williams comes up and he has an impact, but we'll see. But yeah, anyway, guys, that's it for me. Peace. See you later. Let's go Mets.